Yeah, I've thought of the Ministry of Truth, really, because I'm a big fan of George Orwell. Today.
I've actually just started reading 1984. Yeah, I'm on chapter 5, chapter 6, something like that at the minute. I only started a few days ago. Very much resonates with things that's happening today, doesn't it?
Yeah, I especially like the 2 minutes hate.
Yeah.
Where people are cajoled into hating a public figure. Is it from Oceana?
Yeah.
Hate. Because I remember reading that when I was about 14. And then I saw The Prisoner, Patrick McGowan.
What exchange is this?
Number, please.
I want to make a call to...
Local calls only. What is your number, sir?
Haven't got a number.
No number, no call.
I'd like to watch that.
He got offered the job of James Bond just after Connery was leaving. Or was it before? And he turned it down because it was too sexist, too gratuitous. But the idea of the village, I think, carries on very much from Orwell's 1984. It was a multicultural village, so no one knew where they were. And there was a social credit system for good behaviour.
I did tell you we are only local. The charge is 2 units.
Units.
Credit units. Oh well, pay me next time. Be seeing you.
A bit like what's happening in China today.
Yeah.
And people say that's what they're trying to bring to us. I went to China, it'd be about 15 years ago, first time I went. And Shanghai was a marvellous place, absolutely fantastic. And I went to a few other places. And I went back there 3 years ago. Well, you just can't believe the surveillance. Everywhere you go, you're just monitored constantly. And then last year I was in Singapore, and I'd been in Singapore 6 years ago. That's the same. You're absolutely monitored everywhere, and big signs everywhere telling you what to do and what not to do. And that's what people want to bring to us. We had a guide in China, and she worked for the government. There were certain things she couldn't say when you was in a crowd, but when I spoke to her, when we were on our own, she told me a lot of things, right down to what was going to come towards the control and everything that we were going to have during COVID. And I says, that won't happen. It would never happen in England because people won't accept it. And she went, you'll have no choice. Everything she was saying that would happen, and people did accept it. And it was, whether that would happen again, if it all happened again, I don't know. I don't know if people would fall in line so easy this time, because do people feel like they was fooled before with a lot of stuff? I don't know. There's always people who will conform, and those who are always a bit of a rebel in them. But the one bit of rebellion I did see was a lot of people were vaping, and you're not supposed to vape there. It's actually illegal even to have them. But outside some of the bars, people were vaping, which was probably the only place there wasn't cameras, was on the patios of the bars. There were cameras everywhere else, certainly. You couldn't walk 5 yards without a camera staring at you. And I got a taxi, and the taxi driver was telling us they put stuff on social media, and they'll encourage you to snitch on people for doing wrongdoings. People go on these sites and report people so that's happening there as well. The taxi driver says to me, have you noticed there's no police on the streets? He says they all sit in control rooms and watch everybody on all the cameras and then just go and get them, or they've got everybody's details anyway, face recognition, all that business, and then they just go and arrest people at their homes. That side of Asia, people have been used to conforming, mainly conforming. That's been built up over the years. You feel watched all the time, you know what I mean? I mean, we are being watched everywhere we go anyway, aren't we? But over there, it's just, you can feel it, and it is oppressive.
But I was looking into I think it was Ida Auken, a Danish MP, and I think she'd first had the idea of these 15-minute
cities.
Her initial story text is not what it's been turned into. She does finish with a warning because she states that everything that was a product would become a service. And even your home, because when you're not in your own home, somebody else can come in and use it for business or whatever.
The people of Europe had just said a big fat no to all of us politicians. Half of Europe's population did not use their right to vote, and amongst those who voted, 1/3 voted for EU-critical parties.
Right, there's a lot of talk at the moment about 15-minute cities. How do you see them? Where do you see we're going with these?
I've got two visions, really. One is this kind of Logan's Run little utopia with everything that you need on hand, and nobody works because it's done by AI or robots. And then the other more salient view is that it's a prison for humanity.
It's very easy for them to turn a convenience into a open-air prison. I was born in Belfast. I was there for the first few years of the Troubles. And then I got to England, and I was watching the TV, the television, and I started thinking, hang on, there's something wrong here. That's not as it is. That's not the place I've just come from. The propaganda was there at that time, so I noticed that as a young kid. Then fast forward a few years, I went in the forces. I was in the RAF. Yeah. I spent 3 years in Germany on a frontline station, and it was during the Cold War with Russia. So we was constantly on alert and on exercise for nuclear war, basically. And we used to get a lot of weekly sessions in the cinema. We'd go in and we'd be shown films about propaganda, this, that, and the other. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was brainwashing techniques that we used to see and get told about. Moving forward again, I set a building company up in Germany. We did a lot of work in East Germany. I spent a lot of time in East Germany. And I spoke to a lot of people who lived there before the wall come down. And again, it was nothing like we was being told. They was being told similar stories about us as we were about them. And they weren't true from either side. It was just propaganda. And then just going back to the brainwashing stuff, it wasn't till like years and years and years later that I noticed this happening. It was during COVID. As you'll remember, the first lockdown, the weather was fantastic. We had weeks of good weather. Yeah. So I used to sit up the garden, 4 o'clock every day, get me phone on with the TV and wait for the news, crack a beer, wait for the news coming on with the three men of the apocalypse, Boris and his sidekicks, Whitty and Valance. And I'm watching this for a few days, and then I says to my missus, they're using brainwashing techniques. What do you mean? I says, this is what I remember this from years and years ago when I was in Germany. One of the techniques is 3 phases, 3 words that use constantly stick in people's minds. So if you remember, we had like hands, face, space. Then the next day on the podiums, there'd be 3 words: save the NHS, and hands, face, space, and all that. And what was the others? Build back better. Yeah. The new normal. You remember all these phases? And we were constantly bombarded with these. I've dealt with mass all my life in various things. Going back to Germany when we was doing NBC training, nuclear, biological and chemical warfare. So you had to wear gas masks and they had to be fitted right. Otherwise, when they shoved you in the gas chamber, which we used to get shoved in every now and again, if your mask wasn't fitted right, you'll go a sniff of that gas and it weren't very pleasant.
1 in 9, you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. So we did all that. Then in later years in me building building life, we had like working with asbestos, so we had to have specialist masks, this, that, and the other. And then masks that people were using during COVID, on the box it says we got them delivered at work, and on the box it says these are not to be used for coronaviruses. So it even says it on the box. It's written on the tin. Most people were just a bit of cloth around the face.
Yeah.
And there was like shoving this dirty rag into their pocket, back out for weeks and weeks on end. I thought, this is crazy. I can't believe that people are doing this.
You do not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off. Honestly, it's not doing anything, and we got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine, but this is ridiculous.
Hence why I refused to wear a mask, and I got a lot of hassle for that. Not loads, but certain times, and people just being silly. I mean, I went to Marks and Spencer's doing my shopping one day, and a woman screamed her head off, shouting and calling me a murderer. And they had to get the manager and remove her from the shop while I was at the cash out. That's how crazy it was sending people. It sent people round the twist, didn't it? People like Matt Hancock.
Matt Hancock lied to us. Is that what you said?
Surprisingly, I think it's come out that he might have done, look.
Me thinking all politicians are such nice.
Well, majority of them are. Majority of them are honest, aren't they? Aren't they? Aren't they?
I don't think MI5 like our political class, put it that way.
I also used to work with a fella who, like, I used to laugh at him and, like, say he was just into conspiracy theories. But then, over the years, a lot of this stuff they told me become true. What we've been led to believe is conspiracy theories. A lot of it's not. It's just, it comes true. We're almost running out of conspiracy theories now because a lot of them have come true at one point or another.
Operation Northwood, when Kennedy poo-pooed the CIA's plan to invade Cuba by orchestrating terror events over US soil to inflame and enrage the US citizens, one of which was bring down a passenger plane. One of my favourites is that Princess Diana was relieved of her existence.
Relieved of her duties.
Yeah. I think there's too many variables. You just would not go down that route.
Me and my missus has had many conversations on that. She sees the good in everybody and doesn't believe that anybody would stoop to such situations as that. Whereas I'm a bit more open-minded, if you like, to that governments and etc. aren't always looking after our best interests.
But do you really think that more people would repudiate government control on the next big thing that hit us? Do you think people would be braver? Or
I don't know. I really don't know, look, because one night during COVID, I had 12 people over at my house. We were all sat around chewing the fat, and I just invited 11 random people who I know, not all one group of mates or whatever, because I like getting people together from different backgrounds, this, that, and the other. This night, there's 12 of us. We're all sat having a few beers, having crack.
Last Supper.
Yeah. And it come up about the vaccines, who had the jab. There were 6 lads at one side of the table and 6 at the other. And 6 at one side had the jabs. And 6 at the other hadn't. And that wasn't planned or worked out or anything. It was just coincidence, sheer coincidence, if you believe in coincidence. I says to, so why did you have the jab? Because lads are saying, well, I'm not having that. It's an experiment, this, that, and the other, for different reasons. These 6 are saying why they wouldn't have it or why they haven't had it so far. The other 6 who had it, every single one of them 6 said the same reason why they had it. To travel, to go away. they were putting something in their arm that they didn't have a clue what it was, just so they could go on holiday. When you think about it that way, what could the government get people doing by offering them something? I mean, in America, they were giving them free hamburgers and hot dogs, weren't they? And
Yeah, and one country was giving the favourite lamp dancer session.
Well, that might not be such a bad
Yeah,
idea.
It's pros and cons. The hamburger one's brilliant, isn't it? Because you enticing people in with something that's bad for them,
Yeah,
and it just says everything about our culture. That I think.
yeah.
Yeah, but I do think there's as many people will fall for the next thing.
There would be more resistance this time, but they'll try different tactics and they'll come at it from a different angle. I believe this year or next year is a big year in what's going to happen in world events. It's already starting to show with these wars that are being clocked up around the Middle East. And
We're only on 3 wars, so should be up to 5, I think, by May. But how much can you blame people, really? Because we've all been prisoners of conditioning. You've got your parents, your teachers, your television, media,
yeah,
government control.
some form of control or another. I mean, the education system, it's not about educating you, is it, really? It's not telling you how to think, it's telling you what to think. I mean, these politicians, they get in, they get into power based on a manifesto that they're going to do. They never do none of it. They do the complete opposite half the time. And then they make decisions for us that are so important to people's lives without consultation with the people. Look what's happening at the minute. Talked earlier of 15-minute cities. Look at what's happening with them. And all these ULEZ charges and all this lot. Well, every consultation they've done with the people have been like 90-odd% against these things, but they still go ahead and do it. Later this year, they're talking about handing over power to the WHO, the WHO.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're on about handing power over to them for any future pandemics. What gives them the right to take that power away from the people? Such an important decision that could affect our lives forever, and they think it's okay to do that. Now,
Yeah.
stuff like that should definitely have a referendum.
Yeah, and I think when you're dealing with foreign wars as well.
Foreign wars. I mean, just this week we've gone and bombed somewhere. He hasn't even gone to Parliament with it.
Yeah, nor in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the consequences of that going forward can be absolutely huge. And he thinks he's got a right just to go ahead and do it without even taking it to Parliament.
We've had enough of this in Britain with the class system, which is still in operation today.
Of course it is, yeah.
I had a little thing about this with the government long-standing agency last year, and I saw it in its direct manifestation. And I thought all this had been done with decades ago, but
What was that? What do you mean by that?
I can't really go into that, but I saw the class system well and truly working. So it's not good.
What's her name? In Italy, Meloni, is it? She got in with the Italian people saying she's going to do this, do that, get tough on immigration, blah, blah, blah. She's done nothing of what she said she was going to do. Do you know what I mean? She's done the opposite. And she's like, she was supposed to be anti-globalist and all this lot. Well, at the moment, she's looking like as globalist as the rest of them. You know, Klaus Schwab's Young Leaders Club.
Yeah.
Look what's happened throughout the world. They've all been put into positions of power. The latest one is him who's just got in France. He's another one, another young leader. If you follow the money, that's where you usually get your answers.
It's just
Yeah.
the fact that these people are super rich and they're in societies and meetings that we'll never get to be privy with. And there seems to be an awful lot of deciding how the people will progress and how they will live without the people's input. That's what I find really intolerable. I've thought about this a lot. If you can't change things politically, it's a full-on revolution. I just don't think the world's got the stomach to do that, and the power, actually, to do that. Because the elitists, they've got the movers and shakers in all the heads of business. They've got the armed forces.
Don't really like calling them the elitists because there's nothing elite about them, is there? Just the parasites.
Yeah, that's true.
People often ask me if I'm far right. That's the new the new tag that you get on certain things. But I've been called a lefty. Do you know what I mean? And I don't really lean either way. I look at everything as if it makes sense, I'll take notice of it. If it doesn't make sense, I'll just kick it to one side. There's too much of that nowadays. It's putting everybody into a category. Everybody's got to fit into a category, aren't they? You're far left or you're far right, or is it a tactic to turn everybody against everybody? That's such as black against white. It's Muslim against Christian. You just go on and on, don't you? There's always them against the others, isn't it? That's how it goes on. That's just the world we're living in at the minute.
Yeah, I think anybody that's shut down in their belief by one word is either low on subject matter or a coward. If someone calls you...
What, racist, fascist?
Yeah, because those words don't mean anything anymore.
No.
And the real origins of, say, being called a fascist have been watered down horrifically so.
How they've managed to label people and make people scared to speak the truth or speak their mind because they're scared of being labelled this far right nutcase or...
It's like the tail's wagging the dog.
Yeah.
The social media and companies that get a whiff of a new fad craze, they want to be in on it. So their next adverts will feature something that they've heard on the street or from young employees to be down with the kids, parentheses. But there's a lot of cowardice that's allowing these things to germinate and to spread.
You was in the music industry for many years, weren't you? Obviously, the music industry's always been well known for rebellion, hasn't it? Yeah. The great rock and roll and chucking stuff out of hotel windows and this, that and the other. It's always been known in the music industry. But what really, how much the music industry all just jumped into line and not many of them spoke out or rebelled. What's your thoughts and why do you think that happened? Well,
if you're Springsteen or Elton John, you don't mind a couple of years off. You're not going to become poor. But the people that did the actual humping and grafting, those were the ones that were hit. And the small bands that needed venues to be open to play in, we got a little part of that because we were booked to headline quite a few festivals. And one by one, like dominoes, they just disappeared. And then you're looking at a blank diary. But you got all the venues getting in touch with the bands and then saying, we can't have you on this whatever month, sorry, COVID regulations. And there were some things that were government decrees, and then there were other things that the venues were just capitulating to, which happened in every business. But it really killed a lot of bands and a lot of solo artists. And when you take into account, then you've got the mental health problems of people suddenly having no work. And then the only avenue is universal credit and all the permutations of misery that brings. It exponentially gives rise to a lot of mental health problems.
So do you think that's why people in the music industry were so quiet about things and didn't want to speak out because they were scared of losing their jobs, their contracts or whatever? You think there was an element of that in it?
I think it was twofold. One, there were a lot of cowards that wouldn't speak up.
What's the lad in UB40? He lost his job through it all, didn't he?
Matt Hoy.
Matt Hoy, yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
brilliant singer. He was UB40 man for 11 years.
Knowing what's to come was a privilege for me, and I do miss it. But I won't put my life on the line just to sing Red, Red Wine.
And
That was crazy what happened with him, wasn't it?
yeah, he had an underlying health problem with his heart already, and said, I really don't want to take this added thing. And yeah, he got shafted.
Do you know Matt at all?
Yes, I do.
Yeah?
It's a great bloke, very definitely.
Get him on the blower then. Let's see if he wants to come and sit in here.
Yeah, because Matt's got a lot to
do
say
a bit
about.
of a session.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say about politics and his story, what happened to him. And I think that's scandalous to be just let go after all those years.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I read it. I read about it. I'd never been a big follower of UB40. Some of the stuff were all right. But when I read about what happened with him, what he had to sacrifice just for his belief, it's shocking, ridiculous.
I mean, that happened from your low-key bands to people such as Matt. And I think there was another few rock bands, maybe in the States, where the guys said, look, I really don't want to do this. I believe in it, but I don't want to be forced into doing it.
Yeah.
They were labelled anti this, anti that. But for me, if anybody, and this has been from being in short pants, if anybody says you shall do this, I will do the opposite.
Did you see the music industry for what it is? Because you played pretty big gigs and all that, and you did all that where you get picked up, chauffeur drivers and all that business. You went through all that business, didn't you? Played in several countries, I believe.
About 40,
40 countries.
4 continents.
Did you?
Yeah. This is your life. But the gigs had started to become second to the adventure and everything that was the periphery of being in a band. I'm talking the hedonistic lifestyle. And we were all shit. Like foxes in a chicken pen with the ladies, as it were. But it was great, having underwear thrown up on stage. And
Come on. What do you
Yeah.
think you're, Tom Jones?
it's not unusual. Yeah. I have a lot of stories about management.
Is that for another day? You're going to spill a bit?
That's for another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet you had some funny stories as well, though, didn't you?
I fell out of a van on the motorway at like 90 miles an hour.
How'd you manage that?
Because one of the tour managers, we'd stopped.
Forget to shut the door? Or what?
Yeah, quite literally. We'd stopped off at a service station, and one of the Portuguese tour managers, Jorginho, he'd kind of said, okay, see you later, and not shut the door properly. Me being half cut. You'd been half cut at that time. And, there was no seatbelt. So we were up the motorway, and just the wind took me out of the van. We were going at 90, top speed.
Shuffling, no.
And hit the deck. And it's quite strange because I could see, with every roll on the motorway, which is like half a second, you can see the cars coming closer towards you. And I was just thinking, oh, that's it, done. I don't have to return that library book. But due to the camera in the road, I kind of rolled to the banking, came to after a few seconds.
You done much damage?
Yeah, did quite a bit. I was both arms were open, both knees. My boots were split. One of my toes was split. And there was more damage than I thought because the lads got me in the van, took me straight to a hotel. And I had to stop myself from going into shock.
Took you to the hotel, not the hospital?
No, because I had this thing at the back of my mind that I didn't want to go to a foreign hospital rather. Well, hotel, hospital, same thing. So George took me back to my hotel. He ran me a warm bath, and he got this kind of whatever ointment. He just put that on and left me be. And I just remember laying in the bed feeling a bit sorry for myself. But the lads had said to me, "Will you be okay to gig tonight?" And I remember I had to play on a stool and all these bits of glass and grit in my finger ends, which is quite painful when you're playing guitar. And I was drugged up on whatever they were giving me. And then after the gig, there was a party being held for us on the beach front. And of course, there's all these gorgeous Portuguese girls. And I'd sit in this corner feeling sorry for myself with this plate of food. And then a couple of days later, I'm walking down the foyer at the hotel, and I felt like someone had stuck a darning needle in my backside. I was like, oh. So it took me to this hospital. And there was a doctor smoking in the corridor, believe it or not. I found quite funny.
I've got a story about a doctor smoking.
And they took me for an X-ray. She's looking up at this chart, and she says, "Do you see anything?" And I looked and I thought, "That's your job, isn't it?" She went, "Nah, I can't see anything." So it was a bit of a carry-on, bit of a joke. And then I found out that I got a tiny hairline crack in my pelvis. So I got a couple of needles and this like girdle, really tight bandage placed around me. So I had to persevere with that for the rest of the tour. But there was alcohol there, so just made the best of it.
Just helped.
Yeah, as it did.
My doctor's story is we were skiing in the Alps a few years ago. My missus went over and she broke her wrist. So he goes to the doctor's, the medical centre. There's no doctor there, it's shut. Back at 2:00, I think it was. So he goes to the pub across the road. She's in agony. And gets a drink and something to eat. And there's these people sat next to us. So he goes back over at 2:00. The doctor turns up, and it was him who was sat next to us in the pub all this time. And so he was in the pub having a good skinful. He comes in, he does takes her for an X-ray. As he's doing the X-ray, he lights a fag up. And he's there smoking while he's doing this X-ray. And then he puts her a pot on. By this time, he's on his second cigarette. And I just thought, can you imagine seeing that here in an English hospital? Or you just can't imagine it, can you? But it just seemed quite normal to him, obviously. I once remember watching a football cup game, and it went to extra time. And I remember a player for Rotherham United called Tommy Spencer lighting a cigarette up while they were waiting for the extra time to start.
Yeah, I saw Billy Bremner and Jack Charlton smoking.
Did you?
Yeah. There's quite a few of the first division, as it was,
Yeah.
players. Yeah, in the good old 60s and 70s.
We was in the building game. My business partner at the time, he wanted to go and see his mate in Australia. So for New Year, he asked me if I fancied going along. So we went off to Australia for 6 weeks. Made our way back. On the way back, we stopped off in Malaysia and Borneo. When I got back, and obviously I was reading stuff while I was away on the internet and that, the club was in trouble. It was in turmoil. They'd said they couldn't couldn't go into administration. It would have had to be liquidation. So the club basically was going to fold. So I got back home. All the fans, the supporters were all doing sponsored walks, parachute jumps, you name it. They were doing it to raise money. And they'd raised just shy of 200 grand in about a month, 6 weeks while I were away. So I got back and I thought they needed $1 million before March. By this time, we're into February. I phoned the council, the head of the council, asked if I could use the town hall, got the local radio, invited a load of business people up to the town hall. And I stood up and said, look, the fans are doing everything to raise some money, but unless the businesses get together and do something, this ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not happening. I says, who will pledge some money? And everybody were going to chuck this in and chuck that in, and you know what I mean? And so I ended up taking the club on. There was a fella who was involved called Trevor Smallwood at the time. He was a current director at the club, and he was owed something like, I think he was owed $750,000. Well, he chucked me 200 grand. And he said, that'll get the club going. And he was willing to write his debt off the other $750,000. Great fella. Didn't want no recognition for it. A lot of your big boys, your big businesses around the town who said, we'll do this, we'll do that, they just disappeared. Every one of them. It was all your smaller lads who chucked the 5 grands and the 10 grands in, do you know what I mean? I brought a few mates in, brought my accountant in as finance director, another mate come in, stadium director, blah, blah. Another mate, Gary, he come in and did the commercial side. And we were just all like lads, working class backgrounds, and
just winging it.
Winging it, basically, yeah. But we kept the club going. And for 2 years, when we went in, it was losing 1.8 million a year. In our first year, we actually broke even. We actually unbelievably broke. And the second year, we lost, I think it was just shy of 300 grand. But from 1.8 million losses, we got it right down. We couldn't sustain it because it were affecting all our businesses. I mean, I nearly lost everything in my business. It was affecting everybody. So we had to try and get somebody else in, and the club's gone. It's gone on now, and it's operating. They're in the championship. They've got a new stadium, which we set the
wheels in motion.
The wheels for us to have a new stadium with the council. The first venue we ever looked at was where it is now, the new stadium, and we was told we couldn't have that because it didn't fit in the envelope of that land. Plus, the council wanted that land for doing a riverside development. Anyhow, that's long story short. We kept it going 2 years. Had some interesting times. Unbelievable, going from just being a supporter, going home and away every game, and then suddenly you're in the boardrooms. It was crazy. Because I never used to wear a tie. I used to go in the boardroom. I used to wear my suit and an open neck shirt. I didn't. Just another thing that I didn't like being told you had to wear a tie. You were supposed to wear a tie, so I wouldn't.
No tie, no milk.
Yeah. And the only time I ever got hassle for that was we played at Notts County. You used to arrive at the ground and somebody would come and introduce the chairman to you, or the vice chairman if he wasn't around. And so I goes into the boardroom at Notts County. This guy comes up to me and he stands in front of me and looks me up and down. And he goes, can I ask you where your tie is? I says, I haven't got one. He went, and why not? I says, because I don't want one. I says, and what's it got to do with you? He says, when I come to your place, you'll expect me to wear a tie, won't you? I says, listen, mate, you come to our place, you can come in niff for all I care. I don't care what you come in. I says, it's up to you. And I turned and walked over and got myself a drink. Turned my back on him. Next thing, somebody comes up and he goes, Mr. Chairman, this is our chairman. Can't remember his name. He goes, "Are you all right?" I went, "No, not really." He says, "What's wrong?" I says, "Your vice chairman or director, whoever he is," I says, "give me some grief about not wearing a tie." I says, "I didn't like his attitude, to be honest." He went, "He's not the vice chairman or a director. He's the head of the supporters group." So what they had a supporters representative who used to go in the boardroom with them. And this Pillock was the only one who would give me any hassle, all the places we ever went.
Did he own a tailor's?